Please note that the views expressed on this program are those of the individuals who speak them, and not necessarily those of Portsmouth Community Radio, its Board of Trustees, members, volunteers, or underwriters. Good evening and welcome to Spirit Radio. I am your host, Willy Hassell. Along with my co-host, Lynne Nickerson, we will take you on a journey into the unknown where the paranormal becomes the normal. A journey to a world cloaked in darkness where reality becomes a thin veil. So sit back, relax, and join us as we venture into the shadows, the darkness, the unknown, and back. And good evening once again, and welcome to Spirit Radio, the Paranormal Experience. I am your host, Willy Hassell, your gatekeeper to the dark side, your guide to the realm of the unknown, the unseen, the unthinkable. And as always, along with me is the lovely, the mystical, the mysterious Lynne Nickerson.
Good evening, Willy. How are you?
I am doing good, Lynn. How are you doing?
There, can you hear me now? That's a whole lot better.
What? I thought you were going to... Never mind. We're having a little bit of trouble right at the moment getting our guest on the line. We seem to be getting a busy signal. So by any chance, Preston, if you are listening on air, give us a call, 603-430-9722.
And we'll get right back to you, and we'll call you on the line.
And in the meantime, why don't you give them another try, and I will read the upcoming guest list. So starting next week on March 21st, our guest in studio will be Shane Sawah. He is a friend of ours and a paranormal investigator from New Hampshire, and he will be joining us for his second visit to relate some of his latest investigative experiences in the world of ghost hunting. And then on March 28th, we welcome Ray Jordan. He is from the TV series Haunted Australia, which will be premiering on the Sci-Fi Channel here in the U.S. on March 24th at 10 p.m. And Ray is the UK's member of the team, and he'll be giving us a bird's-eye view of what happens behind the scenes of a paranormal investigation show. And then on April 4th, our good friend Tom Spitaleri from Essex County Ghost Project will be visiting to talk about the Paranormal Conference coming up on April 18th in Hampton, New Hampshire. And that is going to be the Essex County Ghost Project Parafest 2015, which will be held at the Ashworth Hotel on Hampton Beach with a number of very interesting speakers like Lauren Coleman from... the cryptozoologist, Paul and Ben Eno from The Truth Behind the Paranormal. Let's see, somebody named Willy Hassell and Lynne Nickerson. They will also be there speaking. And then that is all the proceeds from that are going to the the historic Hilldale Cemetery in Haverhill, Massachusetts. That is a nonprofit organization. Then on April 11th, Tom D'Agostino and his wife Arlene Nicholson will be returning for a third visit, and will be focusing on their latest book on the histories and mysteries of the now defunct weaving mill called the Ramtail Factory in Foster, Rhode Island. And it's always nice to have Tom on. he's a good guest. This guy has some great stories.
He's a wealth.
Well, I keep turning you off because you're trying to.
He's a wealth of information.
He is. And let's see. Then on April 18th, more friends of ours from the Connecticut Paranormal Research Team, Christine LeClaire and Dan Pierre, will be taking time out from their busy schedule. And they're going to come all the way up from Connecticut to join us in the studio to talk about some of their latest investigations in the, well, not just the Connecticut area, but they go all up and down the East Coast. And Christine has been investigating the paranormal for, I don't know, about 25 years. She has lots of great stories. And April 25th, Stephen Matherlees, a UFO enthusiast and author of 2 books, will be joining us to discuss his upcoming 3rd book, focusing on the philosophical questions concerning reincarnation and resurrection, as they relate to not only ourselves, but other sentient beings in the universe. And let's see, then on May 9th, we have Ken Gerhard. He will be our guest, and he has written a book on flying humanoids. Things like, Mothman and...
Yeah, and some creatures that look like bats, some creatures that look like thunderbirds.
All kinds of interesting things.
Yeah, a variety of odd flying creatures.
Variety, yes. Okay.
Yeah, there's more than one. So,
So anyways, we got some really good shows coming up.
And if Preston is listening, to please give us a call, Preston, because we're getting a quick busy signal on your line.
So we seem to have a little problem with tonight. So
I'm thinking maybe the lines are washed out. You know, like the telephone connections. No, not frozen out there, I don't think, but it's Rosita, California.
No, on this end, they're probably washed out now instead of being frozen for a change. Yeah, they're probably all soggy.
What we were hoping to speak about tonight, we can still do it without Preston, but he just adds so much more to it. We were going to be talking about UFOs over New Mexico, and there is such a broad variety of personal testimonies that he's got in his book. They're just astounding, stuff that I had never heard of before. So we're going to try and launch into that, but we're going to give Preston another minute or two, and we're going to also try him on the line. So were you going to play some music, Willie?
Well, I was just going to say, you want me to play a song?
Why don't you play a quick song, and I'll still try to get Preston on the line.
Okay, but can you just give me a half a minute here, because I'm getting an error on the CD player.
Oh, great. I wonder if...
It's going to be one of those nights, I guess.
If it's Mercury retrograde, what the heck's going on?
I don't know.
Okay, did you get that rectified?
No, wait a minute. I'll tell you in a second. Yes, I do. Okay.
Beautiful. Okie doke.
Will be CD number 2. Okay, welcome back to Spirit Radio, the Paranormal Experience. And yes, we are guestless. we can't make connection with our guest tonight, so I guess we're going to...
Not to be considered clueless, though, right?
No, absolutely not. We are never clueless. just guestless.
So you're trying to get him up on Skype?
I am. Well, I'm looking to see if I can find him on Facebook, maybe.
Okay.
Something. So in the meantime...
Well, while you're doing that, we were going to be covering some of the information captured in Preston's book, of course, and it's one of the more recent releases. It was released in 2011, so this stuff, well, it's not all relatively recent, but it does start with the 1880s. But his information is so very well documented. So it goes back to sightings over the skies of New Mexico as far as, I believe it was March of 1880. And there was an airship wave. There was several sightings of what what appeared to be blimps, only they were huge, and they seemed to be propelled by some kind of van system in the rear, and it had windows, or these vehicles had windows in them, and they could see beings in the windows. So this early reporting supports the fact that these sorts of events have been happening for quite some time, and it was by no means the beginning. And it just happens to be that the tracking of these occurrences became a matter of public record, at least in New Mexico, that started back then and continued to this day. So the Roswell incident wasn't by any means the first incident. So since then, there have been many, many sightings of craft in the air. But what I was hoping to cover tonight are the circumstances that qualify as unusual, as well as bizarre or extremely interesting because of the first-hand eyewitness testimonies that are very difficult to dispute, and that being because so many of these, like I said, very well recorded and documented. Many of them are military people, police officers, people that have signed affidavits. It's even been government people. And not necessarily just the military, but people who have been contract workers for the government that have been involved in these really bizarre incidents. So, I'll take a break here, Willie. How we doing?
Well, we just sent Preston a message on Facebook, and we're hoping that
he might
he
might answer us.
He might actually be on his Facebook and see it.
Okay.
And outside of that, I guess we're just going to have to carry on.
Well, I could make one more attempt at calling him, or you can. You're closer to the phone than I am.
All right. Okay. Why don't I do that then?
Well, I could launch into something that I wanted to talk about. Now, there was a video that I recently, actually it was yesterday, found on YouTube, and the story was two hikers in Red Rock State Park hiking on Valentine's Day, that's February 14th, 2005. And they wound up disappearing. However, they did have a little camcorder with them, or, well, it was actually a regular handheld camera. And they had a good afternoon's worth of footage. And toward the end, the woman saw something in the sky like a big cloud, and out of it, they got a good shot of it, there was this smoke and soot and fire that was expelled from this thing, and it landed on the ground close to this couple hiking. Well, the guy went to investigate. He probably shouldn't have. The woman was trying to get him away from there to go for help. And a very odd creature jumped out at him, and it almost looked like a green version of the creature from the Alien, the movie, The Alien with Sigourney Weaver. So It jumped at the guy, it jumped right on his head and wrapped itself around his head, brought him to the ground. The woman drops the camera, and you can see from the side view, from everything happening on the ground, that this creature was attacking him, and then it ran to her, and then the camera goes black. So I was looking at this, and I'm thinking, is this a hoax or is it for real? Because the trouble was, I just finished reading Preston's book, and there is a very unusual account that kind of parallels exactly what happened here. So I'll get back to this movie in just a second about the video clip about these lost hikers, because at the end of the clip it does claim that they're still missing and to contact a county sheriff's department. So the real-life version of this, or a very similar version, is called Burned by a UFO in Preston's book. And what's so intriguing about this is I had never heard of this sort of thing. But it starts in 1964. There's this little 8-year-old boy, and he's playing outside of the laundromat where his grandmother is doing the laundry. And she hears a whooshing sound, and then she turns around and she sees that this little boy, his name was Charlie, he was just, a few feet away from his grandmother. He's burning. He's got black soot all over the upper part of his body. His hair is standing on end as if he'd been electrified. And he's kind of crying, and he's asking his grandmother, am I going to die? Very sad. And she walked over to him, and he apparently had burns all over his head and his face that were second-degree burns. when she ran to him, she saw a metallic object hovering in the sky. And this is what this fire and soot came out of. So she rushed him to the hospital, and it was determined that the burns were second-degree burns. And poor little Charlie, now this was what, 1964, I believe. Yeah, 64. Charlie stayed in the hospital for 5 days healing. And the second odd occurrence, other than fiery soot coming out of a metallic UFO, the child didn't experience any pain. He was in discomfort only because his case, as he was healing, he had severe itching, and they had to sedate him. But this was very well documented. This was not a prank. So I connected it to this this film version, and apparently the film version was a hoax. It looked so authentic. It was very well done. The special effects were very well done.
I don't know why people do things like that.
I don't either, and it's very aggravating because, it mimics life, and then you wonder.
Yeah, and it just takes away from all the
credible
episodes. The real episodes.
Yeah.
It just kind of makes a mockery of them, doesn't it?
It's exactly a mockery. It's very sad. The phone number was an LA phone number. It was supposed to have happened in Washington State, but there's no Tacoma County Sheriff's Department in Washington. There's no Tacoma County in California. The only Red Rock State Park that I could find is in Sedona, Arizona. There's a Red Rock Canyon State Park in California. So nothing added up. And then come to find out, there were some comments there saying these two are actors. And sure enough, I looked up on IMDb, and they both had profiles as actors. And it was the same two people. So it's just really a shame that they hoaxed that, because it sounded so much like what happened to Charlie in 1964, and this was in New Mexico. So that was one of the very first odd ones that Preston had in his book.
And there are a lot of odd ones, are there not?
Well, you're very peculiar, yeah.
Peculiar, like the Owl Man?
Yeah, that was spotted by a trucker. And he was just outside of, I believe it was Deming. You know, Willy, I traveled that road.
Deming, New Mexico. Yeah.
Deming, New Mexico. Yeah, the whole book focuses on New Mexico.
That's right, yeah.
And I was traveling south on I-25 and then west on I-10. And there's an L distance there that was very... The first time I traveled it felt very mystical.
Yeah.
I felt like I was on another planet. And next couple of times, I felt like it was creepy.
Yeah, well, that part of New Mexico is
it's deserted.
Yeah, I've been through there myself a few times.
Yeah, it's like another planet.
It is. It's just sand and.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool.
It is kind of cool, but it's still otherworldly. It looks like another planet, maybe Mars or something. So this trucker saw this this animal on the side of the road. It was kind of scrunched down on the side of the road. It was sort of like all white, but it appeared to look like a primate. It stood up as the truck approached. It turned its head and looked at him, and he said it had the face of a cross between an owl and the body of a baboon, but the most peculiar thing about the body was it had spikes running down from its head down its back. Sounds very reptilian, very dinosaurish.
It does, yeah.
Now, the trucker stated that this happened in 1984. He said that he was on a very tight schedule and he couldn't stop and do any investigating. So he headed off to California. 4 days later, he came through again on a return trip. When he came through that section of the highway, there were 24 black vans all parked along the road and walking through the fields.
Do you think these would be men in black?
I wonder. It makes you wonder.
It does. Why would there suddenly be all these black vans, and weren't there helicopters flying around too? And
he didn't mention the helicopters, not this time.
Okay.
And he did wind up placing a report.
Yeah.
But what do you think he saw? Do you have any idea? Have you got any thoughts on that?
I have no idea what he saw.
Well, I've got this theory
I'm betting you have
in the back of my
some
mind.
kind of an idea there, yeah.
Now, of course, you've heard of all these chupacabra sightings.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And they have found some very peculiar-looking animals in Florida, and then, of course, Cuba and Costa Rica, and in South America. I don't know about Florida, but I do know that in Costa Rica, there's supposed to be an underwater base there. There's also supposed to be a laboratory. And, of course, everybody knows, anybody that's into this stuff knows that there is an underground base in Dulce, New Mexico, and there's supposedly there are laboratories there, and they're performing very, very odd experiments, supposedly working on with the human genome and then mammal genomes, and perhaps even reptilian.
Yeah.
To me, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say I don't really remember, but is Dulce near Deming? Or?
Oh, no, Dulce's in the northwest corner of the state.
Okay.
So Deming is way down in the south. It makes me wonder sometimes if some of these things have gotten lost, and you say, well, deep underground bases, how would they get out of there undetected? Perhaps, just perhaps, like these flying humanoids, like Bigfoot, perhaps they could be fourth dimensional. They could be interdimensional.
Interdimensional, yeah.
And they could perhaps escape. I hope there aren't too many of those things like that. Although there do seem to be an awful lot of chupacabras.
Yeah, well, if they are in another dimension, I hope they're not in another dimension right beside us.
Ew. No, I wasn't thinking that far ahead.
Well, you got to think of these things. I mean, there could be one standing right behind you there, but he's just in a different time zone.
I know. Yeah. Ooh, I don't like that. Oh, well, I'm going to surround myself with light.
Okay.
Do you want to try and get Preston on the line again one more time?
I was going to say, we want to, it's just about the bottom of the hour anyway.
Yeah, okay, we'll do that. We'll take a quick break.
And do our bottom of the hour thing here, and we'll give Preston another try and see what we can come up with.
Okay. Stick around. Supernatural Magazine, the UK's newest paranormal magazine, provides support to Spirit Radio, the Paranormal Experience. It is the magazine's goal to bring every aspect of supernatural news and research from around the world under one roof to create a universal platform for all those interested in the supernatural. More information is available at supernaturalmagazine.com. You are listening to Spirit Radio, the Paranormal Experience on WSCA 106.1 FM, and we'll be right back after this short break.
Okay, welcome back to Spirit Radio, the Paranormal Experience on WSCA 106.1 FM in Portsmouth, West End. And we have a couple of underwriting announcements.
All right. Programming on Portsmouth Community Radio is brought to you by our members and by Fuller Gardens, celebrating the spirit of spring with their annual plant sale. Friday and Saturday, May 8th and 9th at the Gardens, which is located a stone's throw from the ocean at 10 Willow Ave in Northampton. For further information, go online at fullergardens.org. And programming on Portsmouth Community Radio is also made possible by you, our members, and by Living Innovations, helping Seacoast seniors and people with disabilities to lead full and happy lives at home and in the community. For more information, visit livinginnovations.com.
All right, and we finally got him on the line. He just called us back.
Excellent.
And so tonight's guest is Preston Dennett. And this is going to be his third appearance on Spirit Radio, and it's always a pleasure to have him. Preston is a longtime paranormal and UFO investigator. He is the author of 16 books and over 100 articles on the UFO phenomenon. He is also a longtime field investigator with MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network. And he is joining us tonight to talk about his book, UFOs over New Mexico. And so once again, please welcome to the show, Preston Dennett. Good evening, Preston.
Hi, Preston.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me on the show again.
Oh, thank you for joining us. We I don't know what happened, but we were trying to call you. We kept getting a busy signal.
I don't know. It's weird. One of those weird things.
Yeah. Well, we got you now.
You don't have any enemies out there, do you?
It could be.
Are you doing well tonight?
Yeah. The weather's really warm for this time of year for sure.
Oh, good.
Sunny, and doing great.
Well, we were just launching into some of your testimonies here, and we were just talking about the bald baboon episode with the trucker saw the creature on the side of the road.
Right.
And
not your normal type of encounter that you hear. I'm finding out that people are seeing a lot stranger stuff than just, gray type ETs per se.
oh yeah,
This guy, was driving along late at night down this New Mexico highway. When he thought at first it was a baboon, but it clearly wasn't. It was walking on two legs. It was humanoid, and just kind of had that appearance. That was what he first thought. It had big, large eyes and a row of spines going down its back,
that's so creepy.
which I found really interesting and kind of unique. So I thought, my God, chupacabra. It's kind of what popped into my mind. I don't know.
Me too. Although it did still sound different to me. Do you have any theory on what you think that was, Preston?
Well, I would think that if I remember that case correctly, there was military presence involved as well.
Yeah, 24
searching for
black
it.
vans.
So I'm wondering if, this could have been... I have two theories, I guess. Either just your standard weird alien, because, there does seem to be a lot of different types out there, and that's certainly possible, or a genetic experiment.
Yep.
But I do believe that there's that going on both sides, within UFOs for sure, and our own, secret government in areas like Area 51 and other places.
Mm-hmm. But do you think that the ETs have a tendency to crossbreed like that? Do you think they'd have an interest in that?
Well, they appear to. Certainly that seems to be what... I've gotten a number of cases that seem to confirm that, absolutely, that they are crossbreeding with humans.
That's
and,
disconcerting.
For that matter, other ETs.
Well, I was thinking other ETs crossbreeding, yes, but like with earth mammals and reptilians with a humanoid? You think they're into that?
Well, that's a really good question. I did talk to this one lady. This is a wild story. She was having standard abductions, which were continuing into her late in life, 60s even, and she's like, when is this going to stop?
Oh.
But the ETs told her that they put human genes into cats and dogs to make them more relatable to humans,
Oh.
to make them closer to us, that they were doing genetic manipulation throughout centuries, and a lot of some of the famous religious miracles were actually them. They said a lot of people perceived them as angels, things like this.
Really?
And certainly there does seem to be that genetic theme that runs through this. I've got many, many cases. This turns up a lot, I have to say, where a woman will have a newborn baby or be 8 months pregnant or something to that effect, and suddenly UFOs show a great interest.
I know, they lose a pregnancy. But what do you suppose their interest would be in trying to make the animals, the cats and the dogs, more like us? Why would they care?
Well, to a certain, there's, I can only speculate.
Well, yeah.
They are certainly affecting people's lives, seem to be very interested in us and our lives, and are manipulating, to a certain extent, what's going on in a very behind-the-scenes way. So I don't know why they're doing it, but they are, there's no doubt that they're very interested in us.
Oh, I know it.
I've got reports of ETs, speaking of animals and that sort of thing. A case of dog-like ETs, actually a couple of cases. I recently ran across a case of a horse-like ET, and these kind of cases. And you get actually a really wide variety of unique cases. There's one in New Mexico where a kid saw, I believe it was 7 or 8 foot tall, orangish, glowing creature. And another, he saw grays that were about 8 feet tall. Not your typical gray.
You know
You
that.
get a whole wide variety of these ETs, and I'm thinking, bird-like ETs. I get the descriptions of hairless cats a lot. People said it looked just like a hairless cat.
Hairless cat.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think there is some
There is a bird.
Yeah, yeah, there
species.
is,
Yeah.
stuff going on there.
Okay, then how about, I wanted to talk to you about some of the human disappearances. The thing about the farmer that was coming home from town, driving to home through his fields.
I know that case.
Why don't you continue with that? I found that really disturbing.
Yeah, I've been doing this research for quite a while, and I don't run across a lot of cases where people are abducted, by a UFO and not returned.
And not
This is
returned.
certainly one of them, and not the only case in New Mexico, for that matter.
Yeah, there were several, weren't there?
I think there was at least 3.
3 of
if I
them.
recall correctly, yeah.
So this happened
this-
in. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, this one happened in the 70s outside of
1974. Yep.
And this was a very rare incident, and it was actually viewed by the entire family.
And a neighbor.
The farmer drive up, and he's comes driving in pretty quickly because there's this object hovering over his car, pretty high up there, but getting lower, and he's looking out at it, and as the family is watching him from the doorstep, this craft comes right over the pickup and pulls it up and inside of it, and, with the driver.
With the driver.
And he was never seen from again.
I know, and they never found the truck either, did they?
No, they sure didn't.
And they found another individual, but it was someone who was reported missing. I don't know if it was an abduction, but this poor farmer was never found again.
Right. So this is a rare case where they actually saw it. Just think of how many cases
I know.
there where people are missing, down the highway per se, and a UFO comes swooping down over them, which they do a lot.
Very
There's a lot
frightening.
of cases in the book.
And then
You never know.
No, I know it. May of 1976, 2 years later, a family was abducted and never returned. A father, a mother, and a son, a teenage son. Do you know much about that, Preston?
Right? No, we don't know a whole lot about it. I know that the researcher who first uncovered this case, Leonard Stringfield, is a highly respected researcher. He's now deceased, and has been for some time. But he uncovered the case first, and apparently this daughter called her mother, said, "We've encountered ETs, and you'll never see from us again." It wasn't clear exactly what happened to them or how they were taken, whether it was voluntary or not. But apparently the entire family disappeared and was not seen from again, and the whole incident was hushed up. So there are cases like this. Another case where a dad was pursuing a UFO over.
That's
Mexico
right.
and
I was going to bring that up.
UFO, and never came out, which is only one of many cases like that across the United States and the world.
Like he flew into a portal or something. That's what it sounds like. And the rest of the jet fighters just
they
went.
were taken onto these craft and not returned for whatever reason. I don't know. Perhaps it's very hard to speculate.
It is.
We just don't know.
Yeah. Are you familiar with Bob Dean?
Certainly. Yeah, he does a lot of other UFO crash research. And
Yes, he does.
reverse engineering and things like this.
I have watched several tapes of his from Project Camelot, and what he has said was that there are people that have been taken to other planets, or I don't know if they've been given the choice or if it's an abduction type situation. I know some of them, if they want to escape, they can, but it sounded to me like some have just never been heard again against their will, taken somewhere else. So, I mean, it does happen, and that, to have him say that, I found it very interesting. I find him a very credible individual.
Yeah, I do too. And there are a lot of people coming out of the woodwork, really, too. I would call them whistleblowers.
Yes.
Who are saying, this is going on, and they've organized under several researchers like Stephen Greer or Stephen Bassett,
Mm-hmm.
who are both pushing the disclosure movement, which I think we're seeing really a lot of strides towards.
They are.
Still a conspiracy. We're still having current UFO events covered up. And if you come in hand with hard evidence, you better be careful.
Oh, I know. Bob Dean,
Changing.
he's almost 90, and he just recently, I say recently, within just the past few years, like 5 or so, he had been threatened. He had been threatened quite a bit, but he found out that there was a contract on him, and then suddenly it was lifted. He came, very close. I mean, he's an older man now, but he's very lucky that he's still alive because he has disclosed so much information.
Yeah, I just recently I was going over some of my older articles. I wrote an article about the intimidation and murder of UFO witnesses.
Oh.
It can get very serious. There are people who have disclosed and, basically been killed for it. So, it's still...
They think they're doing a service, and they get, this retribution, losing their life.
Yeah. Do you think this is government intimidation?
I do. I think absolutely that. I know of several abductees, Lycia Davidson, Melinda Leslie, Carla Turner.
And they've all died?
Had more problems with the government, really, than the ETs. And certainly Lycia Davidson said to her experiences with the secret government were much more horrendous than the ET experiences.
Oh, it's such a shame. I mean, it's going to come to the surface. They're going to have to say something. And even when they disclose something, I'm sure it's going to be information, disinformation. You're not going to get a straight story. It'll be full of partial truths.
This is a really good time for, I think, citizens and us, because let's face it, the UFOs, if they wanted to, could disclose immediately.
They could show themselves, yeah.
Phoenix lights. So they're holding back, probably wisely. Because, we are very warlike. And
we are.
I think that there is this whole greed that's kind of choking our planet and the secret government.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all becoming more transparent. And we're looking now towards a shift, I think.
I think so, too. I think they're scared.
Yeah. I would imagine that the whole group has got a lot of conflict within its own ranks.
Oh, I'm sure.
I don't know. I'm not really connected to the secret government.
Two of the comments, one of the comments made was the ETs had said, well, I'll get into the Dulce, the wars between the ETs and the military, but they were so incensed that the military had killed a couple of their people, and one of their responses was, we can control your weather. It's like, watch your step. And the other incidents is, of course, the blackouts, the great blackout of the Northeast in 1965, the whole Eastern Seaboard. Well, from about, Virginia northward was blacked out, and it was for several hours. I mean, they've got tremendous control, and I think they're just holding back.
Right. Well, I wrote about that in my book, UFOs Over New York, actually, and it was absolutely a demonstration.
I think so, too.
Actor Stuart Whitman, who had an encounter and bravely came forward and said that the ETs told him flat out it was a demonstration, and that they were worried about our warlike ways and our prejudice, and told him to work on, influencing people to be, kinder and less warlike.
Do you think the message is getting through? It wasn't. Yeah.
I do think that we are improving as a human race in general, bit by bit. Absolutely. I think we're seeing lots of improvements.
There was also the case of the abduction of Bonnie Haynes, and she was one of the individuals that was interviewed by Tom Dongo from Arizona. And this one I found really interesting because she of course was fighting against them abducting her and whatever it was they were doing to her. And then they tried to get a hold of her daughter, and they did get her daughter, but she said that there was an angelic presence that appeared and said, give the child back. And they did. So the daughter wasn't taken. Did you recall that one?
Right, yeah, absolutely. There's a few cases like that in the literature, not a lot, but it's a very, very interesting case for sure because it's got a kind of a mixture of paranormal,
right?
So-called paranormal.
Paranormal and spiritual, and you ask yourself, what is the connection?
Right, and some people have been able to stop abductions by calling on religious figures.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
On the other hand, a lot of the stuff, it does seem to be, how can I put it, masquerading or putting on a show, kind of a display for the witness.
Yeah, like a guise. Typically, though, if you, like I remember Betty Andreessen, she would pray, and they respected her wishes, and toward the end, they even had more respect for her. Are you familiar with the Andreessen affair?
Oh,
Preston?
yeah, very, very much so.
We had her on the show, and she was talking about she would call on Jesus to protect her, and they wound up having respect for her, especially after she met the one. They took her to the one.
The one. Yeah.
Who was supposed to be probably their interpretation of God, or it was very moving.
About it, what she saw.
What was that?
Or not reveal a whole lot, because it was
Yeah.
very personal to her.
Yes, it was. Yeah, I think it was a religious experience almost for her. Let me see. There was, Richard Boyland. I thought his experience was interesting. He drove into a fog on I-80 between
Right.
Deming and Silver City.
Right. Interesting case, because he's another respected UFO researcher.
Right.
Who at the time was traveling, across the United States to visit areas like Area 51 and other areas where we are supposedly reverse engineering UFO craft. And like many UFO researchers I have found, has kind of become investigated by UFOs themselves. So there's sort of, if you get involved in this, there's actually a name for it. It's called UFO Investigators Disease.
Jeez.
They'll take an interest in you for sure. I think that's what happened to him. He drives into this wall of fog and has a period of missing time, and wakes up the next morning and finds a little puncture wound there, and clearly something happened. And he was able to recall what happened and had a very standard abduction.
Mm-hmm.
In a lot of respects, by that I mean gray type ETs and being examined, and it seemed almost like they were just almost saying hi to him. He didn't feel like it was a negative encounter.
Yeah, he mentioned that. He felt that they were benevolent.
Right.
Well, that's good. He got first-hand experience.
And I mean, everyone's experience is different.
Right.
And certainly, people can even have the same general experience and interpret it very different ways.
Mm-hmm.
So it's difficult to say that ETs are friendly when they're abducting people against their will. But on the other hand, look at the human race. They would be much easier to prove as hostile, because among with ETs, what we don't see are a lot of accounts of what I would call overtly hostile or mean or sadistic
That's true.
behavior.
That's true.
And
they have a job to do, and they're going to do it.
And there are a lot of accounts too of people being visited and cured of
true.
things, like cancer and different diseases, right?
That's right. That was the subject of one of my early books, UFO Healings, which listed 106 cases. And I have to tell you,
Well, we'll have to address
there are
that.
probably now twice that in the literature just alone.
Yeah.
We were just discussing the book Messages by Stan Romanek, and in it, he was visited, and he had injured his knee, and it was in a brace, and he woke up the next morning, and he could walk, and the brace was found outside on the lawn, burnt to a crisp. He got healed.
Right, like you don't need it anymore.
Yeah, and when he woke up, he found 4 or 5 puncture wounds in a straight line on the back side of his knee. And he went to the doctor. He and his wife both went to the doctor, and they sat there, and he was totally puzzled. And the doctor wound up said, "Well, it's probably Ghostbusters or something."
Okay.
But he was healed.
It's an extraordinary case with physical evidence.
Yes.
Kind of just, I mean, there's a case in New Mexico in the book involving a child by the name of, I believe it was Keith Davis, who was outside on the sidewalk playing. He was just, like 10 years old when this UFO hovers over him and burns him pretty severely, and then takes off. His grandparent, I believe, who was taking care of him,
His
rushed
grandmother,
outside
yeah.
just in time to watch it dart away. But if this wasn't anything normal, I mean, it wasn't a fireball. They don't know exactly what it was, but it came down out of the sky, hovered right over him, and took off. And his injuries were severe.
Yeah, he was burnt and he had soot.
He rushed to the hospital. Did eventually heal, but the case was at first, covered up.
Yeah, 1964. That was very spooky, and he didn't experience any pain. He just felt severe itching.
Right.
Very
Another
strange.
really interesting case too, about this young girl, Sharon Stoll was her name, and she saw a UFO over the playground at school, and mind you, was like 10 years old, and thought that it had beamed her with some sort of beam or something, and there was other kids in the playground at this time, so it's a pretty interesting case. Rushes home and has very severe burns on her eyes, and had to wear dark sunglasses. Could not understand how she had burnt her eyes so badly, but she said it was this object. And in the weeks that followed this incident, she grew like almost a foot.
Whoa.
Gained like 20 pounds.
She grew a foot?
Apparently, as a result. And of seeing this object, her mother was freaking out, saying, "My 10-year-old is as tall as an adult."
Oh, my gosh. When did that happen?
That was just a few years before the Keith Davis incident. I believe it was, again, early 70s? Yeah.
Early 70s. In California, did you say? Or New Mexico?
No, this was in New Mexico.
Wow. I hadn't heard of that.
It was reported in the newspaper. It was quite a big case at the time, reported in several books.
Is the poor thing still living? I mean, did they shoot her too?
I wondered about that. A follow-up would be nice to know.
Yeah. See how she's doing.
I don't know, and I imagine a lot of people who have these experiences, I know this for a fact, actually, are scarred by it. I don't like using that word, but like Betty Hill often said, it was the first thing she thought about when she woke up and the last thing she thought about when she went to bed.
Right. It changes your worldview.
Travis Walton said words similar to that, and I've certainly got a few witnesses who call me up, every couple of years to talk about their incident.
Yeah.
Which
it doesn't leave you.
Yeah, I'm sure it is a life-changing
experience.
Yeah.
Well, Preston, we're at the end of the hour, unfortunately.
We hate to have to say this, but
I know. We're just going to have to get you back on again. That's all, for a full hour next time.
I don't know what happened there with the phone in the first half hour, but we just couldn't seem to connect with you. But we do appreciate you being here and calling us, and we will definitely have to have you back on again.
Hey, anytime. I appreciate it. I always have a blast with you guys.
Wonderful.
That's great.
All right. Thank you so much, Preston.
But quickly, go ahead and give out websites or
new
where
book
to get your
or
books, appearances, anything you got.
Yeah, my website is my name, PrestonDennett.com. I'm also, so you can just Google my name, and my books are there, excerpts, and you can order them. I'm also going to be speaking up in Santa Clara at the UFO Con on March 29th or 28th and the 29th.
This year.
Month. And I will be speaking also at MUFON in Orange County towards November. So definitely keeping busy.
Wow, that's great. A UFO conference. I bet that's going to be good.
Yeah. When are you gonna come to the Boston area for the conference so we can meet you?
I'm gonna have to find a way, right? It's been a while since I've been towards your neck of the woods.
Yeah. Well,
I would love to meet you.
You don't want to come right now. Wait a couple months.
Wait for the snow to melt. Okay, well, good night, Preston. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
All
Preston,
right, take care.
Thank you very much for joining us. Good night.
All right.
Okay, well, that is Spirit Radio, the Paranormal Experience. And that is it for another week. And we will talk to you next week.
Good night, everyone.